Welcome back to episode 4 of Time Out for Black History. If you recall, in episode 3, we had spent time looking at the Middle Passage and that individual journey for that African from capture, whether it was on the interior or on the coast, the slave marches that took them to the factories and the fortresses, and their eventual sale to the slave ships. In this episode, we're going to be looking at their arrival into the New World. Now, when we generally think about the arrival, the same year almost always comes into everybody's head, and it's 1619. 1619 is that year that Africans began arriving into the New World. That's not true. The truth is there have been Africans in this same vicinity for over 100 years with Spanish Florida. 1520s, 1530s, we saw black Africans in that area. We also saw Africans accompanying Spanish explorers into the New World prior to 1619. But when we talk about 1619, we're talking about the origins of what's going to become known as chattel slavery, or English slavery, the slavery that's going to create America. So what exactly happened in 1619? So in 1619, there was a slave ship by the name of the San Juan Batista. It was a Portuguese slaver. It had picked up its cargo in West Africa and were transporting them to Veracruz, Mexico. Now, on the journey there, they're going to be intercepted somewhere around the Gulf of Mexico. And they're going to be intercepted by two ships that are owned by Robert Rich, who was an English lord. They're technically English ships, but they're pirate ships. One of them's flying a Dutch flag, because back then you flew whatever flag was beneficial to you, depending on the region you were at, the time frame it was. And so these two ships, one of them went by the name of the White Lion. The other one went by the name of the Treasurer. So they intercept this ship and they divide the spoils of this, which ends up being people. And so they get their cargo and they continue on, eventually landing in what's present day Hampton, Virginia, but back then was called Point Comfort. Again, we learn that Jamestown was the landing point. It wasn't Jamestown, it was Point Comfort. Now, these individuals are then going to be dispersed around Virginia, and Jamestown was the spot. So that's kind of where we learn about these individuals. So they arrive. Here comes the question. What are they? So they're sold for commodities. That's what the White Lion arrives. They need provisions. So they sell roughly around 20 of these individuals for food and other provisions. But the problem is this. The labor that exists in the New World is indentured servitude. They have no English law for slavery. There is no slave system. So there's one of three things these people could be. They could be free, they could be slaves, or they could be unfree by definition. Unfree referred to like indentured servants. They didn't have their freedom, but they could eventually earn that freedom. So they weren't free at the moment, but could eventually be free. Now, it's complicated because there are different examples. What we know pretty much is the vast majority of them are going to end up serving lifelong sentences. But we also know there are examples of some who did not. One of those examples is a very interesting case of a man who went by the name of, in 1621, he arrives in Jamestown, arrives in Virginia, and his name is listed only as Antonio a Negro. And he's coming there to work. He's going to be a laborer. Now, you guys all know that in the early years of anything, one of the base instincts for everybody is survival. And survival will have you doing things that you may not do otherwise. You may get along with people you wouldn't have got along with if only the need to survive. And so we know that a majority of these black individuals are working alongside white indentured servants. There's not much of a difference in their daily lives between these individuals in the early years of the colonies. And when I mean early years, I'm talking 1620s, 1630s. Now, Anthony Johnson is going to eventually marry. He's going to have 4 children. And eventually, by 1651, he's actually earned his freedom. And by 1651, he's acquired roughly around 250 acres of his own land. So he's a landowner now. He's actually employed around 5 workers. One of them listed as kind of a servant for life. So technically a slave by 1651. Now someone say, I thought slavery didn't exist. Well, the first documented case of slavery in the New World comes about in 1640. A guy by the name of John Punch. So you have 3 indentured servants that run away from their indentured status, and they're captured. 2 of them white, 1 of them black. The 2 white indentured servants are given additional time put onto their indentured servant contract, while John Punch is punished with service for life. That's the first documented case we have in written contract of somebody being sentenced to life servitude. Now, what we're going to see over time, Anthony Johnson, eventually a fire happens at his plantation, and he's forced to kind of flee, and they go to Maryland. By the time of his death in 1670, his property's been auctioned off. The state decides that it's no longer his family's because Negroes can't own land. And so it's auctioned off to white plantation owners. And so that'll be the next episode where we kind of look at the transition from uncertainty to a fully indoctrinated system of chattel slavery where to be black meant to be a slave and to be a slave meant to be black. And it was a slow process. It wasn't overnight. It was done by a series of laws over time. But it's important to understand in these early years of this utopian society that was going to be different, it didn't matter yet. It wasn't a race-based system that was determined right away. Now, please take a moment or two and hit that subscribe button. Hit the little bell, that notification bell, so you get updates. I'm hoping to update every, couple days and get a new episode up. And also share with somebody. I've seen a lot of responses back to me about different aspects of it, things people didn't know. And I think that, again, with this knowledge, it allows us to better understand what happened, why it happened, why the world looks the way it looks. So please share it out. And I look forward to the next episode, and everyone take care out there.